Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Helios Spotlight interview, a series where we interview the various individuals and projects throughout the EOS.io space that are making an impact on our ecosystem. Today, I have Han from Node 1 BP. He is by far an easy definition of an EOS OG, part of the launch, been around the whole time, very much an integral part of the Eastern community from South Korea. And he's here today to talk about a new campaign called My Vote EOS. So Han, thank you for taking the time for being with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So maybe we'll just, before we get into it, you can tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, and then we'll get into the project at hand.
My name is Han Ryu, and I'm founder and CEO of EOS BP Node 1. And I've been with the community since late 2017, participating from ICO a little bit, and then we ended up in top 3 right in the beginning of the mainnet launch in June 2018, and then we survived, and then we are here, and then I'm initiating, what we call My Vote EOS, which intends to bring, uncompromised vote in EOS governance.
Okay, so that's okay. So uncompromised vote, maybe. So some people, I mean, it's arguable. Some will say BP selection isn't a problem on EOS. We have other problems, and that's fine. It's fair. But to say that maybe there isn't room for improvement is probably, that's probably a fair statement, that there's always room for improvement. And so maybe could you speak to what is compromised about the current status of BP selection? Why is this an important thing for you?
Because why is it important? Because I think it is because in the end, blockchain is a tool that gives legitimacy in public decision making, the consensus making tool. So actually, when you make a consensus about how money should be spent for the community, the decision has to have legitimacy, right? To reflect every single will of every single participants in the community. So in that sense, blockchain consensus algorithm is really about how we're gonna elect. It's a process, different set of designs of process in terms of how we elect those people who's going to notarize the fact that the community is recognizing as the fact is a consensus, subjectivity, right? So I mean that it's really a thing that gives the life to what is true and what is not representing the community, right? So I believe this kind of thing, because public decision makings or public notarization shouldn't be bought or sold. So in that sense, I think to what we have, the current governance structure right now with EOS is not working as intended and envisioned with the launch of the EOS, because it came with the initial constitution that includes no vote by roll along with the DPoS. So to my view, DPoS, actually EOS, one of the biggest selling point of EOS in technical term was DPoS, right? If you wanted to go back to the original intention of the EOS, because even the philosophical foundation of EOS was intention of the code is law, right? Yep. So when you think about that, I think the current ruling culture of what's happening right now with the BP election, maybe some of us wants to say it is a stake, but then I think it is not quite that in my point of view. So I think bringing back healthy, uncompromised vote is what gives the root of coming back to the root of the intention. So I think it is possible because there's enough of a voting power in different exchanges, and if they can be casted in a legitimate way, it's going to give chain very healthy flow of very healthy flow of everything that can be that with the integrity and accountability. And this is something that we lack as a community. So if you don't get your first button right, then
right, yeah.
If you miss the first button, yeah, it's a foundation. It's a foundation of everything. So if we build up something on top of, first button is not, aligned correctly, I think it's like a building on top of a sand. Yeah.
Well, okay, great analogy. And so it's interesting. You mentioned a few things, and one of them that stood out to me was the launch of the chain and the intention of code being the law. And there's also this concept that was batted around a lot recently that led up to the block one freeze of their vesting contract of a social contract. So block one had a social contract that they were not upholding, and the will of the community was that that contract should be ended, that vesting contract should be ended. And that was backed up by the majority of the block producers. So the block producers in power, they agreed with that defiance of a social contract. However, when we speak about social contracts, there was another social contract that there would be no vote by. No, this is well known. It was one of the principal, like you mentioned, when the chain was launched, that was a rule that was going to be adhered to. That was a social contract that was promised by block producers. Do you see a bit of a double standard now when it comes to the social contract being enforced on block one, and yet the same entities doing the enforcement are kind of not recognizing that they themselves are breaking what used to be a social contract?
If we look back to the incident of that thing happened back in December last year, my point of view is like, actually, if the decision was made as per the token holders' will, maybe back in the days we had, although it didn't meet the quorum, that there was a constitution, and then people were, people could cast votes on referendum, right? So there was some ways to see like what people really think about things, right? But then with the current BP landscape, actually those BPs who I don't think they were representing the token community's will, because they bought what they call stake, right? So when they buy stake, usually they buy from exchanges, right? And when exchanges sell their stake to those BPs to get the rebate of 80 to even 120% of the revenue from those BPs, they vote. They just give people rewards, the EOS holders rewards, and then they don't tell who they are voting for, right?
Right.
So if that decision why those BPs who doesn't represent the token holders, because they bought the right from those exchanges, how can we say that it is the will of the token holders?
So maybe we can talk about the negative aspect of selling the votes. So in terms of a thriving ecosystem, I know when I was following EOS at the beginning and when as an ICO holder, I really liked the idea that all these block producers had a face and they were talking, they were on Zoom calls. I personally could connect, maybe it's my small town roots and I just like to connect with groups within a community and a tribe. But so I really like that about EOS. Nowadays, I couldn't put a face to the vast majority of the top 21. I have no idea who really the actual individuals, like Binance is a number 2 BP. Surely CZ is not the face of that BP. You're not going to reach out to CZ to have some sort of impact on what their BP is doing. Similar to the vast majority, like I say, of those BPs do not have a face. So that's one negative aspect is you can't, there's the current landscape is you can't really reach out to these BPs and have your voice as a community member heard. But what's another negative consequence of this commoditization of a vote as you see it?
So basically, I mean, what you just said is one of the very much core thing of the whole problem, because they are BPs are supposed to represent the people, represent the community, right? But then they don't talk. We don't even know who they are. We don't, there's only a couple of people, not even handful, only just a couple, one or two people who have access to all those BPs, right? There's only few people. And then if we don't know who are representing us, isn't it a big problem, right? And then we goes like as if it's not a problem. So, I mean, if that happens, with this condition, what will happen is those BPs, like not all of them, but good number of them, doesn't even have any leeway to take care about what's happening in EOS, because what they are making after paying 80%, even 120% rebate, there's only very small, very little money left to do anything. They cannot hire people. They cannot improve their infrastructure. They don't have any money to like do anything, right? So they don't even care about what's happening. They are not up to, not even, it's very hard to keeping up with what's happening in EOS and make a informed decision. So I think how this thing is all working out at this moment, I think is not ideal in my thinking.
Right. Okay. Yeah. It's so you think about what there's this analogy that I've heard used surrounding the B1's lack of support for EOS, and it was this. I think the term is exangiation. I can't figure out how to pronounce it. Blood loss, death due to blood loss, and so the EOS tokens, the capital being the blood, and it was being not provided. However, the only source of inflation through the network was towards the BPs. There was no worker proposal system. BPs were the direct recipient of all of the blood, and they weren't giving it back due to this voter trade buy sell scheme. As you made 80 to 120% of the rewards had to be paid back to those who they were buying and selling from. So it wasn't. So I think it's important to me that everyone just points B1 as being the devil here, and they're the ultimate problem that EOS has ever had. But they're turning a blind eye to the other problem, which is there was blood flowing into the system. However, it wasn't flowing into the hands of people who needed to work on infrastructure or work on wallets or actually do work to improve the infrastructure that we had. And the BPs are that entity. They were that collective entity that were drawing tokens and not giving it back for useful purposes other than maintaining the position.
In the end, like we had a lot of sufferings with the block one, but then block one is not the only problem. Actually, the problem that you just described with the BPs paying like a 80% rebate, and then left with the only small amount of the money, it's not value, and then those money not spent for the value creation. It's actually block one problem or BP problem. It all boils down to money problem, right? So, and then what happened in the BP side? BP, the voting game side, I think it is very deceptive because, as I described, BP is having very little money after paying that 80% rebate. What happens in the background with the exchanges and their customers end is like, those people getting APR of like pure 2 to 3% APR purely from BP rewards. All the money their customers can make with BP rebate was like that ends up only with the 2 to 3% APR, right? So from stakers perspective, exchanges, EOS token holders perspective, it was a winning game because they were told that they're gonna get this amount of the APR, right? This 2 to 3% of the APR. So they must have been thinking they were winning because they are making money, right? But then what happened on real what happened in that actually is, those money that was supposed to be spent on the value creating thing given for empty tokens without value, actual value creation. It was just they just increased their number of EOS tokens they are holding 2 to 3% per year, but then the lost of the value lost amount of the value, the actual value was more than 2 to 3%. So it's a downward spiral. So I think this has to be corrected. And I don't think all this political, economical decision making has to kept to be made by BPs. We can split this block production function and decision making function. And I think this is something that pretty much many thought leaders are agreeing with, I think. So anyway, at the moment, what happened is that we are losing so much value, not only for block one, but also what's happening behind the BP voting game.
Right. Okay. Well, let's talk about a potential solution then. So let's talk about what your intention and what kind of motivated you to want to start up the myvoteeos.com campaign. Maybe just start there, and we'll get into how you see it playing out.
So actually, when you operate, myvoteeos is a proxy, EOS BP voting proxy that is run on DAO form. So what it does is basically it votes only those BPs who agrees to not engage with the vote buying anymore after getting the votes from this proxy. And it only votes those BPs who promise to not operate second BP, second stock puppet BP. And also that those BPs, it votes those BPs who provides the financial and operation reports on regular basis. So it pretty much keep those BPs accountable. And because it's only voting for those honest BPs who works with the integrity. So, whatever the results comes out, there's going to be communication with those real BPs who have a real face that is actually communicating with the community. I think it is something that changes everything. So, we don't have to hide anything. So all those voting happens, it happens under the table. It happens off chain. So if you're gonna do that, if you're gonna sell our votes, or if you want to, get rid of the what you call voting and then use this term stake, just like any other chains, why don't you do that on chain? Right? So it's just a community decision. If you go that way, community can decide not to use this word voting and then just use staking, but then it's up to community decision, right? But whatever decision we get to make, there has to be legitimacy. That's what I want to see. So it's really about respecting one's right. So, why I want to do this is because I see there's so much potential with EOS. It's not only because of this, it's fast or it is scalable, but also because it's token distribution. And, and also because we have in Korean exchanges, there's a lot of tokens sitting idly without being, had any say so far within EOS history. And I believe it can, make such a good impact. So
okay,
this is something, we need to do. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to get back to the Korean exchange part a bit, because that's key really to how this is going to work. But I think it's important for people to understand in terms of defining like BPs using their block producer reward properly, and how this DAO, how this myvoteeos campaign is going to keep track of that, because backdoor deals are always going to happen. We're never going to be able to stop someone, a BP, from lying straight to our face, because people do that. But what we can do is we can ensure that the BP reward that they receive is used for something that subjectively is good for the network. And that's the key piece of this, is where this DAO, the representatives of the DAO, will have conversations with BPs that sign up. And those BPs are going to disclose financial proof, whatever that might be, but sufficient to say that, look, even if you're buying votes in the background, whatever, as long as the reward you're getting, the EOS reward, is used for something beneficial, paying for staff, paying for infrastructure, paying for developments, paying for dApps, that's at least a whole lot better than we have today. So I think It's clear for people who are going to, they'll never stop vote buying. This is it's a fantasy. It'll never happen. Fine, we won't deny that, but we can at least start to use the inflation towards BPs in a more appropriate manner. So, okay.
I totally agree.
Okay, now talking about the amount of tokens, this is, I think, the most compelling part about this is a Korean that's coming, from the Korean communities initiating this campaign from yourself. Upbit is a huge exchange. I understand it's the biggest crypto exchange in South Korea. They have something in the magnitude of 100 and almost 160 million EOS, just shy, in their cold wallet. That is a huge amount of EOS that are currently not being voted. So if this is so if those tokens were all of a sudden magically turned on and redirected towards this proxy, that could, in a single moment, change the entire landscape of the BPs on EOS. So that's probably that's a highly optimistic, that's like the best case scenario. That's probably not what's going to happen at first, but maybe you can talk us through how you see this playing out and sort of the best case scenario other than the one I just painted.
So if I'm to be greed, I would really like to see it happens all at once, like a one to be, I remember the exact number as of yesterday. It was a 154 million. 154 million is a big number. And then, wow, it would be magical if this 154, EOS tokens being casted and we have all the honest BPs, BPs with the face on the top 21, that would be awesome. But then, the motivation or rational or the core reason, if we look back, what gives us reason to do this? What is the rational or motivation to support this cause from exchange's perspective? Or it's really about respecting their customers' right. So from Upbit's perspective, they already make a big money on daily basis. Money is not a problem. So actually, other exchanges, there's some exchanges, they make a EOS staking program and then sell those votes to those BPs. But then Upbit doesn't want to do that, right? Mm-hmm. So if they going to support this cause, they're gonna do it on opt-in basis.
Right.
For example, they can ask their customers, and if they have a EOS in their account, they can ask a yes or no question with the pop-up menu screen. Do you want to delegate your votes to this proxy? Yes or no? So if they say yes, the amount of their holdings will be, Upbit users, when they say yes, it's going to be stacking up in the size of the proxy. So maybe in the beginning, there's going to be just one proxy. Their Upbit amounts will be delegated to, like my vote EOS proxy in the beginning. But then later, maybe we can make a alliance so that any other proxies joins to this cause to only vote those BPs who pledges not to engage with the vote buying anymore, and then they can apply any other criteria. So I'm gonna only vote those BPs who agree to this, or I'm gonna vote on those BPs who does this, or who doesn't do this, who doesn't do that, or this. Right. So, but then on the baseline, what all those different proxies will agree to will be not engaging with the vote buy, because it's the way to enshrine the integrity and then legitimacy of token holders' real sovereign will. So it's really about respecting sovereignty of individuals, of token holders.
So 154 million, you said. Just to put this into context for the viewers of this, currently the 13th BP is at 152.8 million votes. So this won't happen. We know this because Upbit is going to want their users to opt in, which is exactly how really it should be for all exchange block producers. All exchanges, period, should be giving their token holders, other than just having some fine print in the terms and conditions that says we're going to vote on your behalf, it should be explicit, because the vast majority of us do not read the terms and conditions. We just click the box because we want to have access to the service. It's just how it goes. I mean, there's no denying that. 154 million EOS would replace, if it were turned on, would replace 13 and down. If you combine those with, like, say, Brock Pierce's proxy, we know that Brock Pierce is very much supportive of this ethical view of of legitimate voting. If you combine his 7.5 million EOS, that would put us at 161.5 million, which now replaces 10 and down. That would only leave 9 legacy BPs, and the rest would be replaced with BPs that agreed. And they could be as far down as even below current pay position, like EOS Costa Rica. Great example. A BP that has done a ton for this ecosystem, they do not and refuse to participate in vote by trade sell. And because of that, they're in like 67th, 68th place. So a BP like EOS Costa Rica could, if this happened in our magical fairyland world, where all of a sudden Brock's proxy and Upbit said, yeah, let's vote for these ethical BPs, or this proxy that's doing this, that immediately would turn a 67th ranked BP like EOS Costa Rica and put them into the top 21. So it's transformative if this happened, and that can happen if enough token holders recognize the value. Like the whole point here is people need to see, like, if this makes sense to you, if you're watching this and you're thinking, yeah, this kind of makes sense. I think the BPs should have a face, and I like the BPs. If you enjoyed the fact that if you were here from the beginning, which many of you are, if you're watching this, you were here at the beginning, you suffered through a lot. Did you not enjoy the fact that the BP community that launched this chain was a community that spoke, that had meetings, that got together? That if you want that again, tell your exchanges, make it so part of the myvoteos.com website. There's a link to there's a Twitter feed, a Twitter link to a bunch of different exchanges. You can go onto the website and you can click that. It'll automatically pop up your Twitter feed with a comment saying, hey, please exchange whatever one it is, please vote or use the proxy myvoteos. And if enough people did that, the groundswell of support, if it's there, if people actually care about this, then take the time to go to the website and click the button and submit the tweet. That's it. That alone might be enough to turn the tides. And maybe the whales who are holding a lot of EOS and are participating in this game might see that, hey, if I'm a whale and I really want the price of EOS to go up, this might be good for the price of EOS. This is like a distinguishing factor that EOS has, this community support and this idea of a legitimate ethical voting. That has power. And in the world of ESG and these sort of these questions about is crypto bad, is crypto good? Well, this is putting a face to these BPs, to these node operators. So definitely, it's interesting. Like it won't happen like you say. It's going to most likely allow an opt-in, so it'll be a gradual trickle in of token holders. But it sounds like, so in Korea, can you speak to sort of the media and the coverage and what your plans are to get that Korean community to try to opt in on Upbit?
Yeah, I mean, yesterday I gave a presentation about this movement in a conference called DAOCon in Seoul National University. It's actually Harvard equivalent in Korea University, and then I was blown away by the support for the cause, because it makes so much sense, and nobody can say anything negative about it because it's the right thing. It's the right thing. Mm-hmm. So I think it's gonna garner about lots of awareness about how exchanges should behave and how exchanges and token holders will have different types of relationship, because right now in Korea there's a new law taken effect from March 25th as per FATF's request about travel rule. So right now, non-Korean token holders who have tokens in centralized exchanges can withdraw their money to their private sovereign independent wallet. Mm-hmm. So they cannot even withdraw the money at the moment. So only way for Upbit to support this cause is to allow their customers directly vote from exchanges without withdrawing money to their individual wallets.
It's a fair point, right? Because often I have said many times, hey, people, self-custody, and then vote, participate in chain governance, right? Take your tokens and have your voice heard. But now with the travel law, you can't even do that. So they're kind of stuck. It's almost it's incumbent upon the exchange to allow this.
Yeah, it's kind of bad thing in overall to have this kind of rule applied. But for this specific cause, it's good thing, ironically. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, this is great. Is there any other media? Have some more articles, maybe some other videos?
Yeah, articles, like series of interviews. I'm taking lots of public interviews in Korean medias, YouTubers, media outlets. I have lots of support locally, journalists. Yeah.
Good. So that
So
this will help hopefully spread it to some of the English speaking community.
mm.
I know Brock's a fan of this, so I'm sure he'll speak about this. And I think
It would be
that's
great if he can delegate, if he can join on board with these, my vote use cause, and then, if he can, join force with his proxy, it'll be awesome. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so how many BPs so far have signed up to the pledge?
We have 8, and then there's a handful more we are talking about.
Yeah.
So I think as the size of the proxy grows, I think we will have more and more BPs. Even new BPs will, sign up to win the trust of the community. I mean, yeah, because it's a new opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and it's a bit of a trick, right? I've spoken to a few BPs who are run by very ethical stand-up individuals, but the problem they're in is if they want to be in a paid position, they're forced to pay for votes. Like again, the example of EOS Costa Rica, they refuse to pay for votes. They're not in a paid position, so it's kind of the only way to get into a position to receive some funding is to pay, and you throw away 80% of what you'd receive.
Even if you're willing to pay, it is very hard for you to be voted, because if you want to buy a vote, you will need that contact. Do you have a contact?
Right.
No. There's no one who have right kind of contact, because nobody knows.
So that this is the problem, right? We want these other ethical, good BPs to participate, but they're stuck in this. Well, if I sign on to the pledge, I lose the ability to maintain. So one thing we'll point out is part of the pledge is a 3-month grace period. So you can sign on to the pledge as a BP and not give up your votes that you're currently paying for, but but you've got a 3-month grace period now where you've committed to attempt to wean yourself off of the votes, and hopefully the proxy picks up enough stake. And if this goes as we hope, then there'll be a fair trade there. Well, now you won't need to pay for votes, and you can use this proxy and have free votes. And how much better is that in terms of a carrot? If we can get enough stake there, it's kind of a no-brainer for a lot of these BPs. Why would you want to pay for votes if you can get them for free and then take that reward and put it to use? So I think a lot of BPs watching this, consider that there is a 3-month grace period. And hey, if this doesn't work out as planned, we don't get the stake behind the proxy. Well, 3 months, you say, sorry, I can't do it. And you go back. I personally won't hold any grudge against any BPs. At least you took the first step. I think that signals a lot about your intention. So I hope a few BPs watch this and consider just signing up and taking advantage of that 3-month grace period, where things, because that's the kind of momentum we need to get this to work. Like we need to get the eyes of the buy, like yes, Upbit, who aren't even voting, are willing to do this, but we need the Binances and the Bitfinexes and even like the Nudexes. And again, these BPs are all in the top 21, right? So the ones we name here are direct beneficiaries of the status quo, but that doesn't mean like that's not their main business. Like Binance isn't a BP business. They're a trading, like they're an exchange. They make so much money off of being an exchange. The BP stuff is it's like negligible. It's pointless. So they don't need to do this. They could easily, all of these exchange BPs could just give up that BP thing and let the other BPs come back up. Like there's no reason to be there. So I mean, not that we're gonna can tell them what they should or shouldn't do in terms of business practice, but it's certainly it's clear here that there should be an opportunity for these BPs to recognize that it's more for the whales. The whales should recognize that maybe the BPs aren't the best, the exchanges aren't the best BPs for this network. And if you really want the EOS price to go up, let's empower some of these other block producers like the Gray Masses and the Costa Ricas and the Amsterdams, and I could go on and on and on, right? The EOS Sweden, who runs a Hyperion node and barely in a paid position. Like there's so much room for improvement here that for people who say the block producers aren't a problem, it's like you're sticking your head in the sand. You're not I mean, problems, there's many problems. So to say this isn't one of them is pretty myopic. So I really appreciate your energy, Han. Do you have any last words of wisdom or parting advice for the viewers?
In the end, it's really about community excitement. When things happens on chain, there's an excitement. And excitement comes from narrative, I think. And then it's a story narrative that anyone can be proud of. So I think it is a big thing. So as EOS heals itself with the problem that all of us want to neglect, we have to deal with it. So if we deal with it, face it, and then overcome it, it's going to be something that it can all be proud of, I think.
Yeah.
So
well said. I'm with you on that. And so those watching, please check out myvoteeos.com and consider tweeting. You know, if you have a Twitter account, click on the exchanges that you use and let them know that you'd like to have the option to choose where your custody tokens on that exchange, where are they going? Where is that going? And I think you should care. And I think that there's a lot of room for improvement here. And the idea that EOS is going to be the comeback story of 2022 is one that I'm super excited about. But it's more than just EVM and the ENF. There's more to it, right? We've had 1% and 2% inflation going towards what would support the ENF's initiatives. There's 1% going to BPs that can be put to work in a more useful manner for this ecosystem. So let's have our voices heard as token holders. And maybe we're just all shrimp, and the true whales, the 200 accounts that are the whales, they're not us. That's fine. But that's how democracy works, right? It's about the people all coming together. And if we can align and all push in the same direction, we do have maximum power. So thanks for your time. Thank you, Han, for your time. I really appreciate it. And I hope maybe we'll do this again. Maybe we'll do a follow-up in a month or 2 months' time when this campaign is really out there and in the wild. And hopefully we'll have some positive news to share about the progress.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.